we were able, I don't know if our viewers were able to see any of that cultural program, but that might be the first time a cultural program from Iqaluit is broadcast, EWTN's all over the world, so There you are.
We've been seeing a little bit of it. We're just waiting for the feed to come back, some throat singing, and so we're hopefully going to see some of the cultural entertainment. Father, did you want to comment on what this would mean to the population in Iqaluit?
Yes. Not only for the Inuit people, but for all Indigenous people, to have the opportunity to have a visit by the Holy Father, to have all of this attention being paid to us, is something extraordinary because we are often not heard. There's not much that's known about us. I have the opportunity to speak in lots of different places, and the things that I share are usually brand new for everybody. They don't know much about Indigenous people at all, and since this is the smallest group of all, then even less people know about them, and even among Indigenous people in North America, I would say there's probably a lot who don't know that much about the Inuit people. So yeah, I'm sure that they're very grateful that there's this moment in which people are seeing them and hearing them and having the opportunity to learn a lot of things about them.
That's one of the things that the Holy Father can do, or any really prominent person, but the Holy Father is the head of a church that's in every part of the world, every country in the world, 1 billion people. I recall soon after John Paul was elected, somebody asked him early on about the Church of Silence, that is, under that time, the Church of the Iron Curtain, the church under communism, and he said, the church is silent no more, I speak. Like, I speak, their voice. He was talking about a very specific historical thing. He was from Poland, a communist oppressed country. But that applies more broadly, wherever the Pope goes, whoever's there gets heard. So if he goes to a slum in Brazil, as John Paul did, if he goes to a refugee camp like Pope Francis has gone, or his first visit to Lampedusa where the refugees were drowning in the Mediterranean, they get heard because the Pope is there. Pope doesn't even have to say anything when he goes there. And to a certain degree, what we've seen this week is that not only did people want the Holy Father to come so he could hear them and speak to them, but in fact, their voice, they got heard. And in fact, our Governor General in Canada is an Inuit, so she spoke in the native language of the Inuit, which I don't think has ever, I've never heard at a Canadian public event before, that language being spoken. I'm not saying it never has, I just have never heard it. But a lot of people heard it because there she was right beside the Holy Father. And she's going to be there as she would give the formal farewell to the Holy Father and speaking in her native tongue. Which is,
and we've spoken so much about this week, but I think most important that we speak about it perhaps today, the preservation of language, and how important this is. I mean, we take it for granted as Anglophones, but to those whose language is being threatened or has been threatened or being taken away, can you speak to that, Father?
Sure. Yeah. Indigenous people often say that it's essential that we have our languages, that they are preserved and that they're alive and that they're vibrant, and it's because for us, we pass along history and traditions orally. We don't have written forms. Most Indigenous tribes and peoples do not have any written form, and it's not the method that has been used to pass along everything. So for that reason, it's very important, and it's also important, to share our lives together, to share about our families, to share about our communities, our triumphs and our challenges and our failures and everything that goes on. Being able to do it in our own language, is very different than doing it in another language. And so that's why among the Indigenous people in North America, there are very, very concerted efforts to either recover or to strengthen the languages of all the different tribes and nations that are here in North America. It's one of the most important things to all of the Indigenous peoples in North America.
I had a very interesting experience just a couple months ago. A chief who greeted Pope Francis at Masquachis that first day, Chief Wilton Littlechild, he was on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He's a very prominent figure in both Canadian Indigenous life and Canadian public life in general. And I went to visit him at Masquachis back at the beginning of May and to talk about this visit. And we spent about 2 hours together. And one of the things he said is that, now he would be close to 80 years old, I think he's in his late 70s. And he says, the people who went to residential schools are all grandparents. There's very few who are parents or grandparents. And he said, so I talk to young people today in their 20s, and I say, okay, your grandparents went to the school. They lost their language, perhaps, or they didn't want to speak it because they were feared of bad outcomes. So your parents never learned it. So that was the loss. Then he says, then I say to them, you don't have any of those reasons, right? It's hard. You got to learning language is not easy. He said, but now there are programs that you can study. Some of them are even well funded. Some of them are available. So he said, we lost something. You have to get it back. It's hard work, but that's his own challenge because, of course, the government, or for the church for that matter, they can learn the language and they may support the language at best, but it's going to be an Indigenous project, cultural project to reclaim it.
I mean, when you think about it, personally, if somebody came and said, Kevin, you can no longer use your English language that you've learned, that you've grown up with. You're going to have to learn a new language, and do not, we will ridicule you. When you think about it in your own personal life, it really starts to sink in, and I think this is an important thing. It's something I've kind of learned from you over the past few days, and to appreciate that gift of language and the gift of passing down the faith, and how important that is to pass down the faith, as the Holy Father has spoke about so much this week.
Yeah, and many Indigenous communities have programs for their young people in their schools to learn the language, and many of them also have immersion programs, so the young people end up becoming fluent. And I'm not too familiar with how long it takes to start learning a new Indigenous language and to become fluent, but the goal is that there'll be enough speakers among these young people so they'll continue to speak with one another, that there'll be a community of speakers that can keep the language alive, and I hope that that all of these efforts are successful. And there are different entities that help to provide the funding, the governments and the churches and other Native organizations. So it is something really important, and there are a lot of very concerted efforts that are being undertaken to make our best efforts to.
On that issue on funding, in some of the larger languages, like Cree, for example, there are mass texts, there are biblical readings, there are hymns, and so it's not difficult to have the Mass in Cree. It's been done for quite a number of decades, actually. But in some of the smaller language groups, it's difficult, and so there's a lot of money going into reconciliation projects, and the question is, what does it actually what does a reconciliation project look like? Sometimes it's easy, counseling services, those kinds of things, but some of those reconciliation projects are funding, for example, the translation of, say, the sacred scriptures into some of the smaller Indigenous language where it hasn't been done, or more applicable for Catholics is mass texts. Can you have, because it has to be approved. It's not easy to produce one of those mass text translations, and so that's a kind of example of some, if you want to say specifically Catholic reconciliation projects, is okay. Can we work together to produce texts for the Holy Mass? In the larger languages, it's been done, but at the smaller ones, it's ongoing.
In Canada, the three groups that have the largest number of speakers, they are the Inuit and the Cree and the Ojibwe, the tribe to which I belong. But even those three are considered, I don't know the language that the UN uses, but there are different levels of endangerment for all these languages, and they're also considered endangered because a lot of the speakers are older. So that's why it's really important that these programs in all the schools for the younger people are able to receive the funding they need and enroll the children so that they can learn the language and keep them alive.
Well, we're told that the feed, the images that we're receiving from Iqaluit is going to be up in about 10-15 minutes. So just bear with us, and we will show you that as soon as it comes up. But in the meantime,
Why don't you give our viewers the benefit of your little joke earlier?
the joke? Which joke was that?
The joke was that.
I said that the feed was frozen. It came up on the screen and it is locked. It was frozen on the screen, and I said how appropriate We're in a
From the
Callaway.
Arctic.
Okay, all right. I'm here till Friday. No, actually, I am here till Friday. Try the veal. Father Henry, I wanted to ask you about the work you did on the film, the Knights of Columbus film, because that has had a great deal of impact in communicating what we need to hear about a history that has been suppressed.
Yes. Yeah. So the Knights of Columbus in about 2018 decided that they wanted to undertake something that they call the Native American Outreach Initiative, and that was initiated by the Supreme Knight at the time, Mr. Carl Anderson, and he invited me and Patrick Mason, who is one of their officers, currently the Supreme Secretary, who is a member of the Osage tribe, which is currently living in Oklahoma, and then another gentleman, Graydon Nicholas, who is from New Brunswick. He is Maliseet or Wolastoq. He is actually a lawyer. He's been a judge. He was the lieutenant governor of New Brunswick at one point. So he asked us to get together to advise them on different things that they could do to reach out to Native peoples, both in the United States and Canada, to help them to get more involved with the Knights of Columbus, to help them to get more integrated into the Catholic Church in both the U.S. and Canada, and also to offer some of the charitable programs that they do, such as their Coats for Kids program, and also a wheelchair program that in the past has been offered mainly to veterans, but now they're offering them in Native communities because a lot of people in Native communities have diabetes and have lost limbs. So one of the things that they decided they wanted to do was to produce this documentary on the history of Native American Catholics.
Remind us the name of it?
It's called Enduring Faith.
Enduring Faith.
Yes. And it began to be considered because they had been doing all this filming of these different events that we had undertaken. In 2019, they also highlighted Native peoples at their Supreme Convention, and there were various liturgies and other activities in which we were highlighted. They really had a wonderful Mass in which there was a lot of inclusion of Indigenous culture, music, dance, and so that could be a template for other efforts at any other diocese. That was in Minneapolis. Yeah, that was in 2019. Yes. And so they began to do some additional filming so that they could provide information about the history. They interviewed various Native peoples in the U.S. and Canada. And yes, it's a really beautiful documentary. I was, fortunate that I was able to participate and provide some of the history of the area which I have lived in, which is the Great Lakes area, the history of the missionaries there. I was able to speak about my own grandparents who were placed in residential boarding schools at the age of 4, because that's part of the history. Yeah, it was a very beautiful documentary, and I have made lots of efforts to share it with lots of people. The Knights have been very generous in giving me lots of copies, and it's also available online. And I hope that many people get to see it, because I think it would help lots of people to know a lot more about Native peoples in general, but particularly the history of the Church and Native peoples here in North America.
Yeah, that's at kfc.org if you want to look up that film. It's very, very good. Enduring Faith, E-N-D-U-R-I-N-G, Enduring Faith, from the Knights of Columbus, featuring our own, I say our own, Father Henry. Yeah, beautiful. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Sure. Thank you. Father Raymond, can you tell us what we should be expecting today in this final part of this final leg of the tour of Pope Francis?
Because of the frozen feet, yes, we don't know exactly, but when the Holy Father, got off the plane, he went to a school. They're using schools up there because there are not a lot of big public buildings. So he went to one of the elementary schools there to meet with residential school survivors for about 40 minutes, I think. So that was his second listening or private conversation, because he had one this morning, if you recall, in Quebec City. After that's finished, he's going to come to the town square. There's been a cultural program that's been ongoing, and because Iqaluit is a small place, 7,500 people, there's a fairly big crowd, because I presume everybody who lives there has come for. I mean, I would assume that everybody, the Pope's coming to your town, you'd come out to see him. So that's been ongoing. He's going to join them there, and then he's going to give an address which is focused on young people. So it's actually quite a substantial address. It's not just, a few paragraphs, dear young people. And in a certain sense, there's a kind of appropriateness to that, in that we're marking 20 years exactly. Yesterday was World Youth Day 2002 in Toronto. And if you remember...
how many years did that would be?
20 years,
20
exactly.
Years ago, yes.
But when the Pope left Toronto, it was a 3-country pilgrimage. He was at World Youth Day, then he left, he went to Guatemala. He beatified a missionary who came from Europe and worked amongst the indigenous peoples of Guatemala. And he canonized him as a kind of... now you're going to ask
sorry.
me. I think it's Pedro.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. I could look it up. But anyway, he was canonized. And then he went to Mexico City and canonized Juan Diego, which was not a European missionary bringing the faith to the indigenous peoples. He was an indigenous man who became an evangelist himself of his own people. So that whole pilgrimage of World Youth Day, Guatemala, European missionary canonized, Mexico City, probably the most famous indigenous Catholic, Juan Diego, canonized. And the whole idea of World Youth Day, the theme that year is you are salt of the earth, light of the world. And one of the things, if I had to say, has been underemphasized, not in the official text, but in the whole sort of flavor of this visit, is that the indigenous peoples of the country are not to be reconciled just for their own sake, so that the wounds that they've suffered can be healed, but so that they can live more fully their Christian baptismal vocation, which includes evangelization. And that would start in their own family circles. Part of the wisdom the elders are to hand on is not just wisdom about the natural world, but wisdom about eternal questions. So the Holy Father is going to address young people, and he's going to speak to them about, what you're making a plan for your life, and where does God fit into your plan, because it's good and right that you aspire to have a full, flourishing indigenous life, but you should also desire to have a full, flourishing Christian life. The audience he's speaking to is not entirely Christian, but he's going to emphasize those things. And then after that, the visit is over. And to the official program, he'll go to the airport to go back home.
Father Henry, why young people? There's the issues, the concerns of young people, especially in the North. How important is faith? How important is this address today? And what kind of concerns are young people facing in the North? Indigenous young people across the country, I would say.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I often say, when I get the opportunity to say this, that what Indigenous people in North America need more than anything else is hope. And, that is especially true for young people, because, in a lot of the communities, there's a lot of poverty. There are not opportunities to receive a decent education, and there are not opportunities then to go somewhere else to receive post-secondary education, to establish, good jobs that pay well, to pursue, dreams and goals and ambitions. A lot of the life is concerned with just, very basic things that, that we need to do just to survive. And so, if you live in a place where, there are no jobs, housing is very substandard, there doesn't seem to be a way out of this situation. If you don't have hope, and it's hard to have hope when you live in those situations, then it just seems like, nobody can do anything to make this any better. Nothing can change the situation. But, a very important message of Christ is that he offers us hope. And so, this message of hope that we receive through Christ, that we have been given as Christians, as Catholics, is one that we can bring to people who really need hope. It's important that we evangelize, as you were just talking about. It's important that we offer our Christian witness to our brothers and sisters who live in Indigenous communities, because, you know, the Lord wants everyone to receive His gospel message. The Lord wants everyone to know Him and to believe in Him. He wants everyone to be a member of the body of Christ. He wants everyone to receive all of the blessings and graces that He offers to us and all the help that He offers to us. And, you know, so people who live in situations that are difficult like this, and in which it's hard to see how anything can get better, or to see that there's a way out, and, you know, having hope can enable people to, you know, to have the, you know, the motivation and the desire to change, and to believe that it's possible, you know. So, you know, the Holy Father can offer a really great message to these young people today. And, you know, not only are they dealing with, you know, the situations in their communities, but just in general, you know, they also have access through, you know, through the internet and through satellite and so on, to a lot of the media that, you know, the rest of the Western society is exposed to, you know. And a lot of what they see is not helpful, because, you know, they see people who are more prosperous, they see people who have things they don't have, they see people who are doing things that they can't have, and it just makes, you know, the situation look worse. So, yeah, there's a great opportunity today for the Holy Father, you know, to offer a message of hope, and to also encourage them, you know, to move forward with hope, and to, you know, to work to make their individual lives better, to make their family lives better, to make the life of their communities better. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to say.
Well, one of the difficult things of this visit, not difficult, but realities of this visit, is because it's focused on the offenses of the past and healing, and because of the importance of elders, you may have got the impression that Indigenous Canadians are all over 60 years old. However, the Indigenous community in Canada is the only part of our population that is growing, in that, because of declining birth rates and so forth, if Canada
very interesting.
if Canada didn't have immigrants, the total population of the country would be shrinking. But we have very high immigration, so the population is not shrinking. But of those people who were born in Canada, they're not having enough children to replace, which is, as you know, the phenomenon in many countries around the world. What's that?
I said present company excluded.
God bless you.
I'm doing my best.
You're doing
my best.
You're doing your best. Well
but
done,
can you
Kevin.
repeat
However,
what you said?
the Indigenous community is the only part of the country where the birth rates are above replacement levels. Now, I don't know exactly the figures, but it would be something like, you know, 40% of the Indigenous community be under the age of 25 or something. I could be wrong, it might be 30, but the point is that they're, so in a sense, I understand the nature of the visit. You're talking about something that happened 40, 50 years sometime in the past. If people who went to the schools, they'd be grandparents by now. The importance of elders in the Indigenous community. But, you know, you may have got the sense watching that, you know, oh, this is a community which is mostly 60 plus. It's actually not. It's the youngest part of the Canadian population. So I'm very glad it's the last item. Maybe even better to have it earlier on, but the young people, and when you go to visit places like Masquechese or any other place, if you go to speak with Indigenous Canadians, and you talk to the chiefs and you talk to the elders, the very first thing they say to you is, we're concerned about our young people. And now, every culture is obviously concerned about the young people, but they have a lot of challenges. A lot of pathologies have crept into to young Indigenous people, but they're also very numerous. So there's going to be, on our Indigenous places in this country, a big population. It's not going from 1.5 million down to 1.2 to 1. It's going to be bigger, and so that's an important demographic reality, and so it's going to be highlighted today, I hope.
Well, you're watching the Holy Father's visit to Canada. We are waiting for the feed to return to us, the pictures from Iqaluit, where the Holy Father will be giving an address to the youth as well as the community at large in Iqaluit.
Those young people are getting older.
They're getting older as we're waiting.
For this.
To your point, Father, it also speaks to the pro-life message ingrained in Indigenous peoples. Can you speak to that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, one of the basic values of Indigenous people is that, you know, we respect life. You know, we respect all peoples. We respect life. You know, just as we say, as Catholics from the moment of conception until the moment of natural death. And my experience and my knowledge of Indigenous people is that, abortion is not something that you see very much, that the incidence of abortion would be much lower than it would be among other groups of people. And Father Raymond was saying that, the Indigenous population is young, and it's true both in the U.S. and Canada. We are a very young population compared to other groups of people in Canada. I don't know of any numbers or statistics here in Canada, but I know that from 2010 until 2020, the census in 2010 and the census in 2020 in the U.S., that the population of Native Americans grew 85%. Yeah.
85?
Yeah, 85%. Almost doubled in 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So Native people tend to have large families, and, that's always been the case, and it's still the case today. So, the population is young. And I wish we had the statistics to share with people so they could know, what's the percentage of people under different ages, and how does it compare to other groups of people. But we are the youngest.
It's something like
We
that.
are the youngest demographic.
40% under the age of 25 or something.
Well, it says so much. The other point that we spoke about, I guess, over dinner last night was the illusion of affluence and the happiness that you shared growing up. Now, obviously, the comment, the subject matter that we're dealing with this week aside, you spoke about the happiness that you did have growing up, despite that, and the illusion of affluence. Can you speak to that?
Sure. Yeah. So growing up, one of the things that helped me to be happy was, my faith in Christ and my participation in the life of the church. But probably, another aspect of life that was very fulfilling and life-giving and a source of great happiness was my life and my family. Family life is very important among Indigenous peoples. We're very close to our family members. Children respect their parents, and parents look out for their children, wanting the best for them. And we are very close with our cousins, for example, and in my family. We spent a lot of time with our cousins, our uncles, and our aunts, and our grandparents. I was fortunate that most of my family members lived in the same place that I did, so we spent all of our time together when we were growing up, playing, and also just being a part of all of the different celebrations and events in my family. We gathered often, and when I was growing up, it wouldn't be unusual to be together with hundreds of people who are my family members for various important events such as weddings and funerals and first communions and graduations and birthday parties. I thought that I'd always be living this kind of life, and as time goes on, things change. A lot of it has to do with me moving away from my family, but, family life is very rich. And also, growing up in my community, was an island and not really very developed, so it's a beautiful place, that has a lot of...
Where it is?
We're in southwestern Ontario. We're actually on a number of islands that make up the delta of the St. Clair River, and we have a lot of woodland. We also have a lot of farmland on our islands, and then the largest portion of the islands are made up of wetland. So our community, our islands received recognition from the United Nations about 20 years ago. It could be even longer, but in recent years. And we were given an award because on our islands there are very unique flora and fauna, plants and animals that are no longer found anywhere else, but are representative of the area of North America that we live in. And so when I was growing up, there were still a lot of people who hunted and fished, who grew their crops, and then for us, spending time with all our cousins. In the summertime, we were in the river swimming every day, and then in the wintertime, we spent a lot of time skating. We're out in the woods, and we spent most of our time outside, and we spent it together. So yeah, I have very happy memories of that. We also were able to participate in learning how to dance. We had our dances that were from our tribe, the Ojibwe tribe. I learned to drum and to sing. We had powwows when I was younger. The powwows mostly involved the dances and the singing from our particular tribe. And the 70s, it began to change because people could travel and get around to different places all over North America because of the completion of the freeway systems. And so from that point onward, there was this intertribal kind of powwow that developed that takes dances and music and other elements of the cultures from tribes all across North America. So today the powwows look different than when I was growing up, but I was very glad that I had the opportunity to learn all these things that are from my particular culture. So yeah, we had lots of lots of really great things that we were able to do in our family and the community. Family life and community life is very important, and I have really great memories of being able to be a part of my family and my home community.
Kevin, you may be interested to know that, so Father Henry is from Walpole Island, which is not far from a city called Sarnia, a small city in southwestern Ontario, which is where I was born. My family was only there for a few years. And Father Henry thinks we may have been born in the same hospital.
I was also born in Sarnia. I was born in St. Joseph Hospital in Sarnia.
So I have to check with my mother what hospital I was born in, but there's only 2 hospitals at that time.
Yep.
So we could have been born in the same
Most
hospital.
likely.
How about that?
There you
Being
go.
Catholic, you were likely born in St. Joseph.
Yeah, St. Joseph's Hospital could be.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a small world.
Yeah.
Small
So,
world.
but we left when I was a very little boy, so I don't know that area very well. But when I go back, I'll have to look up Walpole Island.
So you are looking at pictures, I am told, of the Holy Father, Pope Francis in Iqaluit. I believe we're just getting ready to hear him speak. Our feed is down here in Ottawa, so we may be what we say throwing to the Holy Father very soon, as he is about to give an address to the young people of Iqaluit. So, Father, can you share with us any more wisdom? I'm getting a little bit. Did we want to go to that? Okay. All right. So we are going now to go to Vatican Radio commentary on the Holy Father's visit to Iqaluit, and we will be back with you after the program.
Father bringing the gospel, as we can recall Jesus as he left the world, asking us to bring the gospel to the ends of the earth. The only other countries that have population centers further north are those that live in Iceland and Norway. The only other countries that have the auxiliary bishop of Montreal population centers further north are participating in some of the events with the Pope, and he spoke also with Vatican News, Bishop Faubert, and calling the moments with the Holy Father a dense moments of spirituality. He said one thing that impressed him has also been regarding the participating in some of the events with the Pope, and that he participated in was the Holy Father's simplicity and warmth. Bishop Faubert, and calling was the moments with the Holy Father a dense moments of spirituality. He said one thing that impressed him regarding that took place yesterday evening with bishops that he participated members of the clergy, consecrated persons, seminarians, and pastoral workers. And this was, he said, it was a very intense, dense moment of spirituality, but at the same time, in a very simple setting, he said, I guess there is something of Jesus that has been lived. Took place yesterday evening when we encounter one another at members this of level. The clergy, consecrated persons, seminarians, and pastoral workers. According to Bishop Faubert, he said it was a very intense, dense moment of spirituality, but at the same time, in a very in the church in Canada, I guess there is something of Jesus that has been lived. We have got a lot to do. We've got a lot to ponder upon, to reflect upon, to pray upon, in order to become this church that God wants for us to be. according to Bishop Faubert. Pope Francis's words this week give a clear indication of what needs to be done in the Church in Canada, he said we have got a lot to do, we've got a lot to ponder upon, to reflect upon, to pray upon, in order to become this church that God wants for us to be here in Canada. Vatican News also interviewed the provincial vicar of the Society of Jesus in Canada. And he has witnessed the fact that the physical, sexual, and psychological violence suffered by approximately 150,000 residential school children in Canada the vicar provincial does continue to affect the provincial vicar of the Society of Jesus in Canada. And he hopes that the Pope's spirit manifested in his statements will help give new energies to the movement towards reconciliation between the Church and Indigenous communities in the territory we now call Canada, continue to affect their families. And he hopes that the Pope's spirit manifested in his statements will help give new energies to the movement towards reconciliation between the Church and Indigenous communities in the territory we now call Canada, he said. And he said that the Holy Father's words about not forgetting what happened because that would lead to indifference, he said these words of the Holy Father are significant. It's necessary to remember how the policies of assimilation and alienation, which also included the residential school system, said that were and continue to be devastating. Not forgetting what Indigenous because that would lead to indifference. He said the trauma is intergenerational. Are significant. It's necessary to remember how the policies that led to these abuses have not disappeared from Canadian society, he said, which also included one of the most difficult truths to face were and continue to be devastating. That descendants of settlers and new immigrants continue to benefit. He said the trauma is economic and political injustices committed against forces and structures Indigenous that led to these abuses have not disappeared from Canadian society, he said. One of the most difficult truths what is needed is a profound transformation of the relationships that make up the nation of Canada. Continue to benefit at the cultural, political, economic, and interpersonal levels. Makes present in a vivid way the realities of the past, not to awaken guilt, but to trigger compassion and love. To make vividly present to me that this is my sister, my brother. Only this kind of energy can fuel the profound conversion needed. Forgetting instead leads to indifference, and indifference means nothing will change. And so he said the apology of the Holy Father is a step forward in the search for truth, justice, and reconciliation, but that it's merely a beginning. Regarding the Jesuits, he said that there was only one school operated in Spanish Ontario from 1845 until 1958. And he also said that the abuses that took place in these schools depended on the school, but he put them into three primary categories: harsh physical punishments that you could call physical abuse, sexual abuse, and then what he calls cultural genocide, which is the main type of abuse that's being considered today, in the sense that the culture of these people was being erased. It was an effort made on the part of the government and those managing these schools to erase these cultures. It was a harm, he said, that weighed not only on these particular children, but also on all those born into their families after them, because these children were no longer connected to their families. The trauma of the loss of culture, of language, is profound, he said, and it does affect subsequent generations. He quoted one survivor as saying, "I never had a real father, so I didn't know how to be a father to my children." Here we see the Archbishop of Edmonton greeting the performer that we saw earlier in the program. Archbishop Smith from Edmonton prepared the trip. And we also see other members of the papal entourage. This must mean the Pope will be arriving soon. We see Cardinal Michael Cherny, the prefect of the Dicastery for Integral Human Development, originally from Canada. We also saw the Cardinal Secretary of State from the Vatican, Cardinal Pietro Parolin. This is Cardinal Thomas Collins, the Archbishop of Toronto. We see Cardinal Olay on the right. Also from Canada, current prefect of the Dicastery for Bishops, as well as the substitute for the Secretary of State, Archbishop Peña-Parra. Also see here on our screen Archbishop Gallagher, who is in the International Relations with States in the Vatican Secretary of State. The first part of the program will provide a cultural presentation regarding various aspects of the Inuit culture. Be seeing not only singers and dancers, but also we will see a drum dance, and we will be able to hear throat singers. And as we participate in these in being able to see these cultural performances, we can keep in mind that it's these very types of cultural practices that were the subject of the assimilation that was willed by the Canadian government at one time, in which also, unfortunately, members of the Catholic Church participated. Going back to the interview with the provincial vicar of the Jesuits in Canada, the Jesuits themselves apologized in 2015. And he said that they have actively supported 2 middle schools that concentrate primarily on the education of Indigenous children. And these schools also teach the Indigenous culture and spiritual traditions. He said these 2 schools are also committed to supporting their pupils even after they graduate. And he said by doing that, we, the Jesuits, hope to lessen barriers and gaps in education and employment between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people in the country. He said that they encourage the use of Indigenous languages and ceremonies in Catholic religious services as well, and that the Jesuits also hope to make accessible to researchers the historical linguistic resources in their own archives. And regarding access to their own records about residential schools, he said that the Jesuits supported the work of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in preserving the records and files from the Spanish residential school that was managed by the Jesuits. He said the role of the Jesuits in the broader process of reconciliation between the Church in Canada and Indigenous peoples goes back to the mid-1990s. He does admit the Church as a whole was slow to really begin a process of reconciliation, with the exception of a few bishops. It's worthy to note here that the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, who ran the majority of the schools run by Catholic institutions, asked for forgiveness in 1991, and they too are highly committed to programs on behalf of the Indigenous people as their way of participating in the reconciliation process. He said the Jesuits have also paid compensation and he said we, meaning the Jesuits, recognize that we are most ourselves when we are in right relationship with Indigenous peoples. He said our relationships with them have deepened and broadened since the beginning of reconciliation efforts. We, the Jesuits, feel called and committed to listen, to be with, We want not only to serve, but to continue to learn what Canada looks like from the Indigenous perspective and to understand what it means to be allies and friends. And I believe we see our Holy Father arriving behind that curtain. He has been using a wheelchair, so we most likely will see him enter with, there we go, with the wheelchair. And he will be sitting on this chair that has been provided. It looks like it might be covered with bear skin. Our Holy Father has now taken his seat. It's sealskin. Everyone taking photos. We see this has been a long wait for them. It's about 5:50 local time.
Welcome, Pope Francis. Thank you. Tunga sutseriti, iluna sitau, tunga sutseriti. Be welcome, everybody. It's a great pleasure to see you, to be with you, and let us enjoy this moment together. Ate, hoveso hatigi lutalo. Tay malitao, tunga sutisigala niya ta kuninga tusakni yakti siyinik. We will soon welcome a number of Inuit cultural performers from across Inuit Nunangat. Hukulla Hatigit is a group of all Inuit style singers and dancers from Cambridge Bay. Together, they have 60 years of life experiences in learning of who they are. Uhagnera makinakut ta kwa tusakniyaktivut kinaku mangata. Herpartik, taga tusakniyamivut ayar Mary Anautalik. Amalo Lois Suluklak, Dakwa Tusarnemiyavu. Mary is the last living elder relocated from Enandai Lake. Ahermiulutik, Dakwa Tusaksauniermiyuk, Hano Herbaksu Mangata Ahermiuyate, De Matana Lois, Iliniatinga. Sulingwati Utsunilo, Hanvalukti Usunilo. Reavati utsunilo. Teimalo kachachatik. Puvel nitor miuk. Akinisi sibuarapik. Amali salualulu. Nukari huvuk. Teimali mikiyuapi utsutik. Ukio haksuti 6 tuinanik I tuinanilo. Katachapalia si yuvenik. Ananat siya minyo Mary sibuarapin mud ilsakto sutik. And we will also hear the beautiful voice of Diantha Edmonds, who is an Inuk classical singer from Nunatsiavut. She will sing Saint Martigut Yisusi, an Inuktitut song of peace that is traditionally sung at Christmas and New Year. After Diantha, Teimali Tusarniel meyugud, Pita irnemig khilaucha tillugo, uvigaktumig khilaucha hatiharloni, malakai angulalik malamig. Pita will present afterwards something special to Pope Francis. Tema nalan niamiyavut tana ixiarzuarapig Francis khilaucha nermipiyarir pat Pita irnir. Finally, following the address by Pope Francis, the choir of Our Lady of the Assumption Catholic Church will sing the Lord's Prayer in Inuktitut. Ate, bigalofta, nakomig Tunga Sutseritsi. Please be welcome.
Hello. Welcome to Nunavut. As you watch our resilience, people who have survived, but also thrived most importantly. It's you, all of you here and at home, that has helped us get here. The people that weren't part of today, that have gone before us, are here with us today in our hearts. Talva hibulibud ilaw yung nekto talva ni ilaw talva tigumektavun ublume. We continue carry them on. I would like to introduce my family as we journey through together as a family. Paglik, maaipak, may panikang nasiyak, Malakai, our youthful, young male drum dancer, Tammy Itukto, who's an upcoming leader, my granddaughter Makaya, who's learning, and also my granddaughter Ulikto and Noah, who's been with us throughout and continuing to heal. Kwanaila.
And the woman who's been speaking, her name is Julia. The family we just saw performing, coming from Cambridge Bay in Canada. We'll now hear throat singers Mary and Lois. Mary is, as we heard, the last living elder who relocated from Inundai Lake and is the last living singer of this tradition. And Lois, her student, is an actor, a jaw harp player, and a throat singer. We've been hearing throat singing.
Aliluma, 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 aliluma. Aliluma, Hetzalilauman, Aliluma, Hetzalilauman, Aliluma, 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 Aliluma. Aliluma, Hungatzalilauman, Aliluma, Hungatzalilauman, Aliluma, 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 Aliluma.
These are Katajag throat singers.
Vapting nilarin Jesus, uvruxi uviknali mat, uvrumi sai mati raptirut, uvrumi sai mati raptirut, sai
Thank you very much. Matna Lua Kwana. Type Sumani, Mumek Palak Sima Yogut, Kubia Sukluta, Kubia Suktu Marialu Pluta, Mumek Palak Sima Yogut. Amma Ublumi, Kubia Suktugut, Ixira Big Tiki Simagmat, Nunap Tinut. Ammalu innaulik tutigut mumirangapta khilawjarangapta tamakua makkuktukutibut khilawjalak paksuti ma now yutit kwa now yutit Malakai. Thank you. Ublumi pikkosikput udiktipalliayavut pikkosivut ukausikput udiktipalliayavut ublumi tamanna pilriariblugo kuvianammariktok Iksirarapik, Inuit, Nunangannu, Tikikawavit, Kuyanami Marialuk, Matnaluavik, thank you so much. Now, Tamna Kilaut, Atukawayavut, Kuviasuti Blugo, Atukpakaptigo, Iksirarapik Mud, Kuviasukpunga, Mannauyuk, Ublumi, Kuyanamir Sugutikila, Manunaptinut, Tuninaktara, Tamakunangan. Inuluktaatianit Inuit nunanganninga lugu tamanna tuniniaqtara qilaut taapsumunga iksirartuarapigmun. Thank you, Your Holiness. Thank you very much for coming to Nunavut. Inuit Nunangat, we are extremely happy that you came to meet with us. Thank you so much. Matna Luavik, thank you. Now I present this Inuit drum from Inuit Nunangat, and give to His Holiness for his present, that he remember us when he goes back to Vatican. Thank you so much.
Our Holy Father accepting the gift of this drum and shaking hands with Elder Pita, and also offering the customary gift of a rosary, as well as for the youth drum dancer Malachi.
Thank you!
And the reaction of the crowd. And the two dancers taking a bow as they leave the stage. At this point, we should hear Pope Francis' words. We remember that this is the final event on our Holy Father's 6-day trip to Canada. So this is his last discourse before departing for Rome. We're in Iqaluit in the Canadian territory of Nunavut. Our Holy Father spent the last 2 days in Quebec and traveled here by plane this morning.
Queridos hermanos y hermanas, unusakuk.
Dear
Buenas
brothers and
tardes.
sisters, unasatuk.
Saludo cordialmente a la señora gobernadora general y a todos ustedes. Estoy feliz de visitarlos. Agradezco sus palabras, los cantos, las danzas, la música, que aprecio mucho.
I greet the Governor General and all of you most heartily. I am happy to be here with you. I thank you for your words of welcome and for your songs, dances, and music, which I enjoyed greatly.
Hace poco,
Katangotika ulukut. Ilisakeva Governor General. Amaru ilunasi. Tunga suktitiga si kuve suktunga tamani tareksak. Amaru tunga suktitaugama. Ingit tullu. Momel tullu. Tunga suktiapunga.
hace poco escuché a varios de ustedes, exalumnos de las escuelas residenciales. Gracias por lo que tuvieron la valentía de decir, compartiendo grandes sufrimientos que yo no hubiera imaginado. Eso ha reavivado en mí la indignación y la vergüenza que me acompañan desde hace meses. También hoy, también aquí, quisiera decirles que estoy muy apenado y quiero pedir perdón por el mal que cometieron no pocos católicos en esas escuelas, que contribuyeron a políticas de asimilación cultural y desvinculación. Mamianak. Me volvió a la mente el testimonio de un anciano que describía la belleza del clima que reinaba en las familias indígenas antes de la llegada del sistema de las escuelas residenciales. Comparaba esa época en la que los abuelos, padres e hijos estaban juntos en armonía con la primavera, cuando los pajaritos cantan felices alrededor de la mamá. Pero de repente, decía, el canto se detuvo, las familias fueron disgregadas, se llevaron a los pequeños lejos de su ambiente y el invierno descendió sobre todo.
A short while ago, I listened to several of you who were students of residential schools. I thank you for having had the courage to tell your stories and to share your great suffering that I could not imagine. This only renewed in me the indignation and shame that I have felt for months. Today too, in this place, I want to tell you how very sorry I am and to ask for forgiveness for the evil perpetrated by not a few Catholics who in these schools contributed to the policies of cultural assimilation and enfranchisement. I was reminded of the testimony of an elder who spoke of the beautiful spirit that reigned in Indigenous families before the advent of the residential school system. He compared those days when grandparents, parents, and children were harmoniously together to springtime, when young birds chirp happily around their mother. But suddenly, he said, the singing stopped. Families were broken up, and the little ones were taken far away from home. Winter fell over everything.
Mana mango yuyok tu sakti taurau kama unika viulunga ilinare akatak tu vinani. Kuyagi vaka teikoa unika reaktoraktut amaro aksorona katarau tangin nilihaluti. Tana nutarok titilau man uvanik silnar simaninik tarokujinang miglo takigasang no ikpigilap taning. Ulumilu tavani ukauti yumavasi suri mameanini ukauti yumavasi isumagi yunertao yumavagullo. Tamakwa pinarlung neuraktut saninga yureutikuni ikserarjakuni ilangi nutakwa pinarlung neurang mata amaro ilakusir sinek piyon nang nakaruner titinerlu ilinervik tigun. Ikesi yoro kama inuto kamoni karviolunga te semanigo tarningit sangi yutilugit piu yutilugit ilagi ngoyut katingateak tutik ilinerak titaw kataraw kartinagi te semani amma ulumi urakto takullugo angayok karayoyut ittukiyoyut ningyukukiyoyut anana tekiyoyut kitongagilo katingateak kataraw mata upengami takwaro kupanoan ukarogao yaktut anana menu kisianili tana inutokao ni kakloni kupanoan alat ukarogao yakuni lang mata ilagi nguyut sugati yaw lutik mikiyutaw yullo awlaw jo lutik angikaminni ukiyong mallo
Dichas palabras, al mismo tiempo que provocan dolor, suscitan también escándalo, más aún si las confrontamos con la palabra de Dios que mandó: honra a tu padre y a tu madre para que tengas una larga vida en la tierra que el Señor tu Dios te da. Para muchas de vuestras familias esto no fue posible. Dejó de cumplirse cuando los hijos fueron separados de sus padres y el propio país fue percibido como algo peligroso y extraño. Esas asimilaciones forzadas evocan otra página bíblica, el relato del justo Nabot, que no quería ceder la viña heredada de sus padres, a quien gobernando estaba dispuesto a usar cualquier medio para quitársela. Y también vienen a la mente esas palabras fuertes de Jesús contra quien escandaliza a los pequeños y desprecia a alguno de ellos. Cuánto mal al romper los vínculos entre padres e hijos, a herir los afectos más queridos, al lastimar y escandalizar a los pequeños.
Stories like these not only cause us pain, they also create scandal. All the more so if we compare them with the Word of God and its commandment. Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land which the Lord your God gives you. That possibility did not exist for many of your families. It vanished when children were separated from their parents and their own nation was perceived as dangerous and foreign. those forced assimilations evoke another biblical story, that of the just man Naboth, who refused to give the vineyard he had inherited from his ancestors to those in power, who were willing to use every means to snatch it from him. And we think too of the forceful words of Jesus about those who scandalize or despise even one of the little ones. How evil it is to break the bonds uniting parents and children, to damage our closest relationships, to harm and scandalize the little ones.
Tamakuning aunikanik tusalone anel na tuinangimad pitsiangin ng migtaw sakit itinu mad amaru takwa takugao tigut gutiup okaw singit pekuyakisimayang ilo atatang ning ananang ni kamatseak tuksavutit inukutakulo sinunami gutiup tunisimayanganing Tana ilangin nun atok tayo naksilaw ng malunin ilaging ngayon nun. Pitakakuner suni pivikakuner titaw lutik. Ang ayok kagayaw yung kitong ngakil. Amaro taman nakapya naktulo ni alayo ang naksunilo. Takwaro ilakusakingit amin ni ilakusatak titaw valero tilugi. Paipa ko tinik taw ni kagayaw si mangmingmat tahan na Inutia yok jaba nabo tunisi yumaraw si mangimat vaine si urving me si vurigi yang inno kaitaw si mayon piyon nang datak titaw si mayonun tamakwa aglahat Jesus yub ukaw si mayangit tamakwa sukusi sukutigiyaw kunanigi pityataw kulugit Tamanna piungituk si kumitin ang ayokaya mini kitong angin amaro inu katigiter no mik pinang no pango kataw yaya kaktumik urugaya naktumiti tisimaluni kapya naktumiti tisimalunilo.
Queridos amigos, estamos aquí con voluntad de recorrer juntos un camino de sanación y de reconciliación que con el auxilio del Creador nos ayuda a dar luz sobre lo sucedido y a superar el pasado oscuro. A propósito de vencer la oscuridad, también ahora, como en nuestro encuentro de fines de marzo, ustedes han encendido el kulik. Este, además de dar luz durante las largas noches invernales, permitía, difundiendo calor, resistir al rigor del clima. Por tanto, era esencial para vivir. También hoy permanece como un bellísimo símbolo de vida, de un vivir luminoso que no se rinde ante la oscuridad de la noche. Así son ustedes, un testimonio perenne de la vida que no se apaga, de una luz que resplandece y que ninguno logra sofocar.
Dear friends, we are here with a desire to pursue together a journey of healing and reconciliation that, with the help of the Creator, can help us shed light on what happened and move beyond that dark past. As a way of dispelling the darkness, now too, as in our meeting at the end of March, you have lit the kulek. Not only did the kulek give light amid the long winter nights, it also relieved the harshness of the weather by spreading heat. In this way, it was essential for living. Even today, this lamp remains a beautiful symbol of life, of a luminous way of living that does not yield to the darkness of the night. That is what you are, a perennial testimony to the life that never ends. A light that shines and that no one has been able to extinguish.
Ilan na kaya kamani pugut ataw tikut mami palya ng mol anagui palya ng mol si bumak palya yung maluta ak katigigluta. Ikayok tauruta sana yitinut kau may palya yung nakata kanuin ni rok tunik amaro Te koa piung ito aro rautut kangit palerugi. Tamana taktuk kau magpalea kullugu March mid katimani rautuk te kane kulleng mig ikum magseyo karauman. Tana kullek pimakiu simangmat ukiukut taktu me kau majutau luni. Agla niglasung nang me unak sititi ukutiti simaluni. Amaro majutau simangman. Ulumilo ta nakulik piu yung makayarong man inusitinut narunay kutauluni. Ta na taktok kau magpalya yun ng man ama unwak ulamo kau magluni. Te may tuvuti. Narunay kuta kau mayuluni kami tao yun nang ito.
Estoy muy agradecido por la oportunidad de estar aquí en el Nunavut, dentro del Inuit Nunagat. He intentado imaginar, después de nuestro encuentro en Roma, estos vastos lugares donde viven desde tiempos inmemorables y que para otros serían hostiles. Ustedes han sabido amarlos, respetarlos, custodiarlos y apreciarlos, transmitiendo valores fundamentales de generación en generación, como el respeto por los ancianos, un genuino sentido de fraternidad y el cuidado del medio ambiente. Hay una hermosa y armónica correspondencia entre ustedes y la tierra que habitan, porque también esta es fuerte y resiliente y responde con mucha luz a la oscuridad que la envuelve durante gran parte del año. Pero también esta tierra, como cada persona y cada población, es delicada y necesita ser cuidada. Cuidarla, transmitir el cuidado. A esto en particular están llamados los jóvenes, sostenido por el ejemplo de los ancianos. Cuidar la tierra, cuidar las personas, cuidar la historia.
I am grateful for this opportunity to be here in Nunavut within Inuit Nunangat. I tried to imagine, after our meeting in Rome, these vast places that you have inhabited from time immemorial and that others would consider inhospitable. You have come to love these places, to respect, cherish, and enhance them, passing on from generation to generation such basic values as respect for the elderly, genuine fraternity, and care for the environment. There is a beautiful relationship between you and this land you inhabit, because it too is strong and resilient and responds with brilliant light to the darkness that enshrouds it for most of the year. Yet this land, like every individual and every people, is also fragile and needs to be cared for. Caring, teaching, and learning how to care. To this task, young people in particular, supported by the example of their elders, have been called. Care for the earth, care for your people, care for your history.
Kovesuk punga pidikap titaw gama tamani no nang vomo ko naktunga amma Inuit no nangano. Isumana surok tunga Rome me katima katigilaw tiluta tamalna no nagiyasi te mga tokaro kano ilangin no isumagayaw kataktok no naksaw ngigyak sanganing. Kisiani tamanna no nagigasiw piugilugo pinagilugo. Amaru piusitigya lakataklugo. Kauyemanagayasi kinguvasin no kauyemarati palyalusiw. Inutokang nilu ikpigusutertusi. Amaro avatisini kamatertusi. tamanna piu yo arong man. Nuna sinillu pillo atakanneriyasi. Tamanna tau sangiyok asiruyo ito. Ammaru kaume valia siunguluni tangniu yumi. Akagu ilawani tagara katakaruaktilugu. Tamanna nuna piusiriyanga takulugu ilisititut. Temeituk nikanaktuluni ikpigiyaw teageri. Ikpigusutianek iliseinek ammaru ilineatitsinek. Tamanna inusuktunek sa yunut piluaktumik ikayusuktautilugi tasiuktautilugilu inutukanun inamnullu. Ati tana nunakjoak kamagitiak siuk inukutisilu amaro atoximayasi.
Quisiera entonces dirigirme a ti, joven Inuit, futuro de esta tierra y presente de su historia. Quisiera decirte, citando a un gran poeta, lo que has heredado de tus padres, gánatelo para poseerlo. No basta vivir de rentas, es necesario volver a ganarse lo que se ha recibido como don. Por tanto, no temas escuchar una y otra vez los consejos de los más ancianos, abrazar tu historia para escribir páginas nuevas, apasionarte, tomar posición frente a los hechos y a las personas, arriesgarte. Y para ayudarte a hacer resplandecer la lámpara de tu existencia, también yo quisiera darte, como hermano anciano, 3 consejos.
I would like now to address you, Inuit youth, the future of this land and the present of its history. I would like to say to you, in the words of a great poet, that which you inherited from your fathers must first be earned before it can become yours. It is not enough to live off the past. It is necessary to earn what was given to you as a gift. Do not be afraid then to continue listening to the counsels of the elderly, to embrace your past in order to write new pages of history, to be passionate, to take a stand before facts and people, to get involved, to help you make the lamp of your lives shine brightly. I too, as an elder brother, would like to offer you 3 pieces of advice.
Inusuktu makuktut Inuit ukauti yumarakpasi. Sibuniksa tamannanuna ammara ullume teiko atuktaw kataksemayut ukauti yumavasi titaraktaw semayumi. Atatangni pitare lauktat pitare tuinarun nangin navio ayoner lutit piyunar silutilu piyare kamigavi. Ai tu se arigaviu kapia sungnak nare nare. Amaro tasirtau kataluti inutuhanno. Tako atung nikuyut ikillugit. Atung nertasinik nutanik titerak palearitti. Ikpigusutiarlusi pilluriglusi. Amaro suriyunik pillurillusi nikuvinga katallusi. Pikatau kataritti. Ikayullusi takoa kaumani inusi sinnut sakiyate akullugi. Tanaro inutukalluni pingasunik ukausik sakarivo ikayutik sani.
Primero de los consejos, camina hacia lo alto. Vives en estas vastas regiones del norte, que ellas te recuerden tu vocación a tender hacia lo alto, sin dejarse tirar abajo por quien quiere hacerte creer que es mejor pensar solo en ti mismo y usar el tiempo que tienes únicamente para tu diversión y tus intereses. Amigo, no estás hecho para ir tirando, para pasar las jornadas equilibrando deberes y placeres. Estás hecho para volar alto, hacia los deseos más verdaderos y hermosos que tienes en el corazón, hacia Dios para amarlo y hacia el prójimo para servirlo. No pienses que los grandes sueños de la vida sean cielos inalcanzables. No, estás hecho para levantar el vuelo, para abrazar la valentía de la verdad y promover la belleza de la justicia, para elevar tu temple moral, ser compasivo, servir a los demás y construir relaciones, para sembrar paz y cuidado donde te encuentres, para encender el entusiasmo de los que te rodean, para ir más allá, no para igualarlo todo.
The first piece of advice is keep walking upwards. You live in these vast regions of the north. May they remind you of your vocation to strive ever higher without letting yourself get dragged down by those who would have you believe that it is better to think only of yourself and to use your time solely for your leisure and your interests. Friends, you were not made to get by, to spend your days balancing duties and pleasures, but you were made to soar upwards towards the most genuine, true, and beautiful desires that you cherish in your hearts, to love God and to serve your neighbor. Don't think that life's great dreams are as unattainable as the sky above. No, you were made to fly, to embrace the courage of truth and the beauty of justice, to elevate your moral temper, to be compassionate, to serve others, and to build relationships, to sow seeds of peace and loving care wherever you are, to ignite the enthusiasm of all of those all around you, to keep pressing forward and not to flatten everything out.
Sivulak pa o kausiksay kayo tiksa kayo magayak tanga, kayo sigit, pangwak palegit. Tamane ukiw tatumio taulusi, kayo sigiti, pinaswag na kaya si, pangwak kane, abungak kane, pigaswagiti. Amaro kataksak tao guro ako si nukangaw tiging ilugi. Imin ukpeko sugi akakavit, iling nito ngitok. Akakayang nang metuin na ngitok lo. Kasi ani ikayok tiging nang mik amaro inutuin nang nami. Inuna sa gatuin naktuk sa raungit nasi. Kasi ani makita kulusi. Piuramo, amaro guti nagligilugu saniliriyasilo. Tamakwa inusang me sinaktu mani piyak sa ngigiyangin nik isumatu nang ilusi. Sorlo inuksaktu tito kilang me. Kisani ikpigasuti asisinik piyitsirlusi inu katekate Inuit ukpering magutaman na amakangak suilusi kapya suyuiturusi naglingnik korlusi amarutaman na kaumagyarlugo sivo mo agutigitiakan na korlugo sivo ni si manera si titao gayakto.
Pero me podrían decir, vivir así es más arduo que volar. Cierto, no es fácil. Porque siempre estás echando esa fuerza de gravedad espiritual que empuja para tirarnos abajo, para paralizar los deseos, para debilitar la alegría. Entonces, piensa en la golondrina del Ártico, que nosotros llamamos charrán. Esa no deja que los vientos contrarios o los cambios de temperatura le impidan ir de un lado a otro de la tierra. A veces elige caminos que no son directos, acepta desviaciones, se adapta a ciertos vientos, pero siempre mantiene la meta, siempre va a su destino. Encontrará gente que intentará borrar tus sueños, que te dirá que te conformes con poco, que luches solo por lo que te conviene. Entonces te preguntarás, ¿por qué tengo que esforzarme por algo en lo que los demás no creen? Y además, ¿cómo puedo volar en un mundo que parece que cae cada vez más bajo, en medio de escándalos, guerras, engaños, injusticias, destrucción del ambiente, indiferencia hacia los más débiles, decepciones por parte de los que tendrían que dar el ejemplo? Ante estas preguntas, ¿cuál es la respuesta?
But you might say, to live like that is harder than flying. Certainly, it is not easy, because there is a kind of hidden force of spiritual gravity that tries to drag us down, paralyze our desires, and lessen our joy. Keep thinking of the Arctic swallow that in Spanish we call a charan. It does not let headwinds or sudden changes in temperature stop it from flying from one end of the earth to the other. At times, it chooses alternate routes, accepts detours, adapts to certain winds, but it always has a clear goal, and it always arrives at its destination. You will meet people who will try to erase your dreams, who will tell you to settle for less, to fight only for what is in your interest. Then you will have to ask yourself, why do I need to go out of my way for what other people do not believe in? Or again, how can I soar in a world that seems constantly to be dragged down by scandals, wars, fraud, injustice, environmental destruction, indifference towards those in need, disillusionment from those who should be giving an example? Faced with these questions, what is the answer?
Kisiane aperitu o katuinare akatosi tana o kausir yanga ayong nang naksauman kangata yunangin nata. Kisiane li ayong nakarawa tilugu ukperosung namet tamne tinne pitakang memmat umare akasumik kisiane kataktitaw na sungo kasi gata amarupi yung manariyavot nungutirtaw kaya sunguluti. Amma kuvea sungnek pirtaw na susunguluni. Tana ikesi jutigi yaha kupanoa Spanish titut. Tana kupanoa. Tao vangato karong ungasik tuarong met. Mau nga ukiok takto mo pato, mau nga palea tilugo, ako naktukusuk, ano joa kusu silang nalukulu. Kisiani ikungaw yare kalnene takunatuniok, tao nga kayusin nasok, tao nga teikunga karame. Amaro ilingnot aperitu na kaktuti kanuemat. Teman na itarea kapunga ukperosuk to kaktin nago uvaroni kanuarog li tema pekataw yung nakama nunak joame tema nga rema kataksaktaw na so kataktiluta makununga piyong itunot kataktiri yunot suruktiri yunot lu amaro avatitinik piyong nertiteva sukana yunik tamakwa Tamajaro tilugi kanuitumili uktutik saktakat tiapa tamakwa apekutik said sakakatak tilugi kanoklikiu yau yunakpan.
Quisiera decirte a ti, joven, a ti, hermano y hermana joven, tú eres la respuesta. Tu hermano, tu hermana, no solo porque si te rindes ya perdiste de antemano, sino porque el futuro está en tus manos. Está en tus manos la comunidad que te ha generado, el ambiente en el que vives, la esperanza de tus coetáneos, de los que aún sin pedírtelo esperan de ti el bien original e irrepetible que puedes introducir en la historia, porque cada uno de nosotros es único. El mundo que habitas es la riqueza que has heredado. Ámalo como te ha amado quien te ha dado la vida y las alegrías más grandes, como te ama Dios, que por ti ha creado todo lo bello que existe y no deja de confiar en ti, ni siquiera por un brevísimo instante. Él cree en tus talentos. Cada vez que lo busques comprenderás cómo el camino que te llama a recorrer tiende siempre hacia lo alto. Lo advertirás cuando rezando mires el cielo y sobre todo cuando alces la mirada al crucificado. Entenderás que Jesús desde la cruz no te señala con el dedo, sino que te abraza, te anima, porque cree en ti, aunque tú mismo has dejado de creer en ti. Entonces no pierdas nunca la esperanza. Lucha, dalo todo y no te arrepentirás. Sigue adelante el camino, un paso tras otro hacia lo mejor. Instala el navegador de tu existencia hacia una meta grande, hacia lo alto.
Here is what I would tell you, young people. You are the answer. You, my brother, and you, my sister, you are the answer. Not just because once you give up, you have already lost, but because the future is even now in your hands. The community that gave you birth, the environment in which you live, the hope of your peers, of those who, without even asking, expect from you the irreplaceable treasure that you can bring to history. All these things are in your hands because each one of us is unique. The world you are living in is the treasure you have inherited. Love it, even as God, who gave you life and its great joys, loved you and created all this great beauty for you. God never ceases to have confidence in you, not for a second. He believes in your talents. When you seek Him, you will come to realize how the path He calls you to follow always goes upwards. You will realize this when you look up at the sky as you pray, and especially when you contemplate Him on the cross. You will come to realize that Jesus, from the cross, never points His finger at you. He embraces you and encourages you because He believes in you, even at those times when you stop believing in yourself. So never lose hope. Fight. Give it your all, and you will not be sorry. Go forward on your journey, step by step, towards the best. Set the GPS of your lives on a great destination, upwards.
Ima o kautigayak pasi, kiu juta uvusi, tavalaki uvusili. Sa pililaw ni sinong ito, sa araw si manit sino tuinang ito, kisiani sibuniksak tigumeakasiw. Nunaring ni piroksimagasi avatisilu tamanna niriyong naktaro titiavaw yun nakmat inukatigiasilu aglat apiriyaw raw na niriyong naktakangmat King of Vigak saung itumik tunekosea kamnomi tamakkoa tigumeagasiu upinagane ilunasi ajiging ituinaugasi ajiging ituinaugata tamanna nunakjoang inuvigiyavut sanayaw tiak simayo arong matpiuyulu nilu ilingnut sanayaw simayo ambaro Ukpiritear lugit piyunang nariyasi, pikaw nariyasi. Tuksiara nga silu, tapaw nga kivya nga katarlusi, kawya katarnertusi, kilang mod, kivya nga tilusi, piloar tumik. Saningayumon Tana Jesusi Ilingnik Tiko Tuigon Nangimat, Kisianili Ikitinga so, Tiliuritiaktok, Tiliuritiasungoloni Ilingnilu Upirusungmat, Piloactomic, Iminik Upirik Yuneli Yarangasi. Nereunamik Asiuyiteli Teresi, Kayusi Teresi Unatariti, Amaru. Ugwa jangit si tema kayo sigusi, sibo mo agitti, alok palengin narlusi, piyo nagpamot, pinaswa katarlusi. Tanaro tamarikute akiglusi inusisini, tapaw nga kayo sigitti.
El segundo consejo, ir hacia la luz. En los momentos de tristeza y desconsuelo, piensa en el kulik, que tiene un mensaje para ti. ¿Cuál? Que existe para ir hacia la luz cada día, no solo el día de tu nacimiento, cuando no dependió de ti, sino cada día. Cotidianamente estás llamado a llevar una luz nueva al mundo, la luz de tus ojos, la de tu sonrisa, la del bien que tú y solo tú puedes aportar, no lo puede aportar otro. Pero para ir hacia la luz hay que luchar cada día con la oscuridad. Sí, hay una lucha cotidiana entre la luz y las tinieblas, que no sucede afuera, en un lugar cualquiera, sino dentro de cada uno de nosotros. El camino de la luz requiere valientes decisiones del corazón contra la oscuridad de las falsedades. Requiere desarrollar buenas costumbres para vivir bien, que no se sigan a estelas luminosas que desaparecen fugazmente, fuegos artificiales que solo dejan humo, son espejismos, parodias de la felicidad, como dijo aquí en Canadá San Juan Pablo II. Quizás no haya tiniebla más densa que la que se introduce en el alma de los jóvenes cuando falsos profetas apagan en ellos la luz de la fe, de la esperanza y del amor. Hermano, hermana, Jesús te acompaña, te desea iluminar el corazón para guiarte hacia la luz. Él dijo, yo soy la luz del mundo, pero también dijo a sus discípulos, ustedes son la luz del mundo. Por tanto, también tú eres luz del mundo y lo serás cada vez más si luchas para alejar del corazón la triste oscuridad del mal.
The second piece of advice is, come to the light. When you feel sad or downcast, think of the kulik. It has a message for you. What message? That you are meant to come into the light each day. Not just on the day of your birth, when it did not depend on you, but every day. Each day you are called to bring new light into the world. The light of your eyes, the light of your smile, the light of your goodness that you and only you can bring. Yet to come into the light, to be reborn, you need to fight each day against the darkness. Yes, there is a daily clash between light and darkness, which does not take place somewhere out there, but within each one of us. To follow the way of light requires courageous and heartfelt decisions to resist the darkness of lies. It means developing good habits to live well, not to chase bursts of light that disappear quickly, fireworks that leave only smoke in their wake. These are illusions, parodies of happiness, as St. John Paul II said here in Canada. And I quote, "There is perhaps no darkness deeper than the darkness that enters young people's souls when false prophets extinguish in them the light of faith and hope and love." End of the quotation. Dear brother, dear sister, Jesus is close to you, and he wants to light up your heart, to make you come to the light. He said of himself, "I am the light of the world." But he also told his disciples, "You are the light of the world." You too then are light for the world, and you will shine all the brighter if you struggle to cast out the dark shadows of evil from your heart.
Ai pau kau siksak ilisinun tunay umayak gayak taka kau manamoari numasurigovit kataksimargovillo kullit itkakatarlogo ilingnut o kau siksakangman kau taman kau manamo katarya kakatak kau maya katarya kasungulutaru inunang ni pigiatun na ngitok kasi ane kau taman, kau maksaya katarya kakata. Kau manang milu, takuk sao titi yun naktusi, nunak joang mo, iyisi, kungan nisi, amaru, narago tiyanak, ivitualo tana, tunakutigi yun nasukilugo. Kau manang molo ni, inusutan nuta kautama pinaswa katarlugo I piungitolu piuyolu unaten nasu tak tavani sakayangi karuapat takuksaung itumi temeliung nasungumat aglad ilutinni kaumanamon kayu silusi ilikusitia vaktarner inutearutik sanik tana tukikamat sorlo kumoyut puyung mekeme sungong mata kisiani ta kwata lerutitu nausud inusuk tunun itinak sarong metanong mik pitakari sungong man tana kaumanang mik kamitin na sung niyo sungulo ni niriung ng mik ang managling ng mik. Katangotik ka, ukauti basi Jesus iling no kanimat ang marukaw may yumallo ni ivi umatinganik. Tana ukaksimayok nunak juang mik kaumaniubo nga. Amaru iliniak takuti minun ukaraw simang mingmat kaumaniuvusi. Ilisitaw kaumaniugivusi nunak joang mut. Kaumatiariti aksurong nek tana pirlugu umatisini.
Para aprender a hacerlo hay que adquirir un arte continuo que requiere superar las dificultades y las contradicciones por medio de una búsqueda continua de soluciones. Es el arte de separar cada día la luz de las tinieblas. Para crear un mundo bueno, dice la Biblia, Dios comenzó justamente así, separando la luz de las tinieblas. También nosotros, si queremos ser mejores, tenemos que aprender a distinguir la luz de las tinieblas. ¿Por dónde se empieza? Puedes empezar preguntándote qué es lo que me parece luminoso y seductor, pero después me deja dentro un gran vacío. Estas son las tinieblas. En cambio, ¿qué es lo que me hace bien y me deja paz en el corazón, aunque antes me haya pedido que saliera de ciertas comodidades y que dominara ciertos instintos? Esta es la luz. Y me sigo preguntando, ¿cuál es la fuerza que nos permite separar dentro de nosotros la luz de las tinieblas, que nos hace decir no a las tentaciones del mal y sí a las ocasiones del bien? Es la libertad. Libertad que no es hacer todo lo que me parece y me gusta, no es aquello que puedo hacer a pesar de los otros, sino por los otros. No es un total arbitrio, sino responsabilidad. La libertad es el don más grande que nuestro Padre Celestial nos ha dado junto con la vida.
To do this, there is a skill that we have to acquire, one that calls for overcoming difficulties and contradictions through a continuous search for solutions. It is the art of daily separating light from darkness, To create a good world, the Bible tells us, God began just like that, by separating the light from the darkness. We too, if we want to become better, must learn to distinguish light from darkness. Where do we start? You can start by asking yourself, what are the things that first strike me as glittery and seductive, but then leave me with a feeling of deep emptiness? That is the darkness. What, on the other hand, is good for me and leaves a feeling of peace in my heart, even if it first calls me to give up certain conveniences and to master certain instincts? That is the light. And I ask again, what is the power that enables us to separate the light from the darkness within us, that enables us to say no to the temptations of evil and yes to all that is good? It is freedom. Freedom does not mean doing everything I want and acting as I please. Freedom is not about what I can do in spite of others, but what I can do for others. Freedom is not total caprice, but responsibility. Freedom, along with life, is the greatest gift that our Heavenly Father has given us.
Teme kulusi ayon ne kare karevusi. Tana anigwe katangnak aksorongnak tunig ukumay tuniglo. Akigutik sanig kinakatare kamnolno. Tamanna kau taman avikti jutau yare kaso kau manermik tamnomiglo. Nunak joami piu yumik Pikulluta paipaku titigut ukau jawagut guti temak pigerok simangman. Kau manek tamnerlu taktoklu aviklugi. Uvagut tauk temak piyunarivugut kau mayuk taktoklu kau yemaraglugi. Nakili pigeron nakpita. Uvatini apereyun naktugut. Kisu tema sibulak panguruni uvan nokilak tuk piyuminak tuk luva. Kisu tema uvan ni sunaw titiyun ni katakpa. Ilu rakakon ni titi katakpa. Tana tang ni uluni. Ay pangangagulu kisu tema piyuva amaru ikping na itian naktuk umatini sema ni kaktitiyo. Tana sibulak pa akaw na niuluni kaw maniuvo amaro Amerikanak punga kisu tema piyon nang na kang niuva aviktitiyon nak to kaw mayong mik tak tumiglu ilutini uvatinik akaron nak titiyo amaro angeron nak titiso. Tana isumaksokon ng niuman. Isumaksokon ng tukikakpok. Ilan nikut piyum ato kumangitakarwa tindi ato katakaya kang nitindi. Taman na isumaksokon ng asitinutaw inusiw iloani tana piyunak pango katangmat.
Por último, el tercer consejo, hacer equipo. Los jóvenes hacen grandes cosas juntos, no solos, porque ustedes jóvenes son como las estrellas del cielo, que aquí brillan de manera espléndida. Su belleza nace del conjunto de las constelaciones que forman e iluminan y orientan las noches del mundo. También ustedes, llamados a las alturas del cielo y a resplandecer en la tierra, están hechos para brillar juntos. Es necesario permitir a los jóvenes que formen grupos, que estén en movimiento. No pueden pasar las jornadas aislados, rehenes de un teléfono. Los grandes glaciares de estas tierras me hacen pensar en el deporte nacional del Canadá, el hockey sobre hielo. ¿Cómo es posible que Canadá conquiste todas las medallas olímpicas? ¿Cómo hicieron Sarah Nurse o Marie-Philippe Poulin para marcar todos esos goles El hockey conjuga bien disciplina y creatividad, táctica y físico, pero lo que hace la diferencia siempre es el espíritu de equipo, presupuesto indispensable para afrontar las imprevisibles circunstancias del juego. Hacer equipo significa creer que para alcanzar grandes objetivos no se puede avanzar solos. Es necesario moverse juntos, tener la paciencia de combinar pases y movimientos para tejer estrategias de juego. También significa dejar espacio a los demás, salir rápidamente cuando es el propio turno y alentar a los compañeros. Ese es el espíritu de equipo.
Finally, the third piece of advice, be part of a team. Young people do great things together, not alone. You young people are like the stars in the sky, which shine so marvelously on this land. Their beauty comes from the whole, from the constellations that they make up, which give light and provide bearings in the nights of this world. You too, called to the heights of heaven and to shine here on earth, are made to shine together in unison. Young people have to be allowed to congregate, to be on the move. They can't spend their days alone, hostage to a cell phone. The great glaciers of these lands make me think of Canada's national sport, ice hockey. How does Canada manage to win all those Olympic medals? How did Sarah Nurse or Marie-Philippe Poulin get to score all those goals? Hockey combines discipline and creativity, tactics and physical strength, but team spirit always makes the difference. It is essential for responding to the unpredictability of every game. Teamwork means believing that in order to achieve great goals, you cannot go it alone. You have to move together, to have the patience to practice and carry out complicated plays. Teamwork also involves making room for others, dashing out quickly when it is your turn, and cheering on your teammates. That is team spirit.
Kingolok pamelo kauji gumagayari vonga. Taperi kasi katu jinek pilere katiging nek tamanna makuk tunod katu jau toa kami atau seo katigi toa kami piu yo arong nik piu nang mata avonga kalarog lu tikiuti yunari luti inutung iluti makuk tut ullureang ogasi ullureang titu ogasi kau makatak tut kau makatak tut tamani nunagayasinni tamanna Inuit juti gasiuk piu yo aruluni ullureang okatigid temak amisoharo katang mata ilisitaw temak kau makatigi gunnarevusi atau siu katigi lusi makuktut katitun nakatare kak mata ingi kakatar lutiglo inututu nakatare kangitut ukaraw teraranullo atungak tau si matu nangiluti tamane nunagayasinni iqaygama Canada me ila takwa au yuitui iqaysigi yakka Canada me pingwa gotiga katakta sinni hakiming kanoano Canada me pingwa vigjoak to kaktilugo Olympic madutangin nasunguvan kanoano takwa pisika ngayud Sarah Nurse Varone Marie-Philippe Poulin skoaron nakataksimavan hakinnek tamanna aksuru taulune pilimak sa taulune pekatang mat amaru isimak sakseo katang mata kanukannek piyun ng mga ata timimigullu ikaili saklutik sangik ti saklutik pekatang mata kisiane atau seo katigig tutik amaru katujilu ti pisu temaglu pekullusi inutungin nasi Atau tikut ingira katigigon na kaya karnek. Kinuisa akong narnerlo. Ayaw ner sa katarnek pilimak sa katarlo ni. Tema ikayok tigi katarlo ni uluid ilangin ni ayong nakatangman. Katudya katigi tiarlo ni. Katudya katigi tiarnek pivekak titija kaya karni usungong mingmat asitin ni. Amaro makoa agvertud agverterluge. Amaro kikaksiyara nga vetana asit ikayok song milugo. Taman na tapering niyongman. Katudya katiging niyongman.
Amigos, caminen hacia lo alto. Vayan cada día hacia la luz y hagan equipo. Y hagan todo esto en vuestra cultura, en el hermosísimo lenguaje Inuktitut. Les deseo que escuchando a los ancianos y recurriendo a la riqueza de vuestras tradiciones y de vuestra libertad, abracen el Evangelio custodiado y transmitido por sus antepasados y que encuentren el rostro Inuk de Jesucristo. Los bendigo de corazón y les digo, Kuhanamik.
Friends, keep walking upwards. Come to the light each day and be part of a team. Do all this within your own culture and in the very beautiful Inuktitut language. It is my hope and prayer that by listening to your elders and drawing from the richness of your traditions and your personal freedom, you will embrace the gospel preserved and handed down by your ancestors, and thus come to see the Inuk face of Jesus Christ. I bless you from my heart, and to all of you I say, Kuyanami.
Inukatika, kayo sigiti, pisu nariti. Kaumamo katarlusi, amaropi katarusi. Tana inuktut, ukause inuksi, inuktitungnek, atok lugu, ilikusisi, atok katarlugu. Amaro niriungnek, tuksaya katang nerlo, nara katarlusi, inutokarnik, inarnik. Amaro ilikusisi ningatut, piusisi ni tamakkoa, atong lugit, amaro nang minak isumaksurun nang ni, atong milugo. Amaro takwa gus pilit, sivunis siningak simayut, tigurugit, amaro takurugo inyo kinanga tana Jesus say maktipasi umatini amaro ilisinurima ukakpunga kuyan nami.
And now Our Father. Our Holy Father has donned, it looks like also a sealskin stole. And as we heard earlier, the choir of Our Lady of the Assumption Catholic Church will sing,
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
The Lord be with you.
And also with you,
Blessed be the name of Lord.
who made the heaven and earth.
Our help is the name of Lord. May Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Ananian iliarata, pilita, tuksian ilianga, atutsialagut. Akavot, kilang mitugi, atit sumagi, siatauli, nalagaw ni Khailali, iyumayay piniatali, nunamisulukilami, ugluminihik sa tingning, tunilamitigot, piyong inihon, isumagiyong aiki, tay matahuvatigno,
And the program concludes with Father Daniel Perot and the choir from Our Lady of the Assumption Catholic Church as they sing the Lord's Prayer in Inuit. The choir, I won't go through all the names here, but beautiful conclusion to this ceremony tonight. We'll let them finish the song here. And this beautiful event comes to an end. The Holy Father addressing the crowds in Iqaluit. Father Raymond, any thoughts on the Holy Father's address?
Well, I must say, I'm just admiring the Holy Father at the end of this week and a long day, 3-hour flight and everything. And that address, it was a dense address, translated from Spanish and then English and Inuktitut. And at the end, I must say, I was flagging, but he seemed energetic and emphatic, and God bless him for his enthusiasm. It was addressed to young people. He told them sort of to aim high. If you're a Pier Giorgio Frassati fan, the verso l'alto, towards the heights, he said always move upwards. It's very similar. He had a nice bit about freedom, which is obviously a key question for young people. He said you're meant for freedom, but don't use your freedom as just a license to do whatever you want. You know, put your freedom to some noble purpose. He quoted from St. John Paul II at World Youth Day 20 years ago yesterday, saying there's nothing sadder than a young person who's let sort of the excitement of life and the light of hope go out.
People and encourage them to look up to God, and to also not allow anything to impede them from realizing their life dreams, that they can do it, that God loves them, that He will never let them down, that He will give them the confidence that they need. But He also encourages them, to love God and to love their brothers and sisters. And at the the thing that I liked that He really said was to these young people, never lose hope, fight, give it all, and you'll never be sorry. Because that's something that that I've been able to learn in my life, and they do have to fight for a lot of things, and they do have to be persistent and not give up, and they can do that with the Lord at their side, and the Lord before them, and the Lord above them.
What will you take home? I'll ask this from both of you. What will you take home from this visit? It's been a full week. Lots of things have been said. If you had to kind of distill it down to something that you might take home with you, maybe we'll start with you, Father Raymond. Or I'll give you.
I think what I would take home is the importance of presence. The Pope didn't say anything here that he didn't say in Rome. He didn't say anything in Rome that hadn't been said before, sometimes 30 years before. I think a lot of people in the church in Canada might have been frustrated, like, are we still at this? Are we doing it again? But what we learned this week was the importance of presence, that it makes a difference. And we saw people for whom it made a great difference that the Pope was here. And, we think of the famous passage from Acts of the Apostles, that the people came out into the streets so that the shadow of Peter could fall on them as he walked by. And there's something about that was that the Pope was here so his shadow could fall. And that's not insignificant. And I think sometimes, especially those of us in Catholic media who see the Pope every single day, you know, obviously not in person, but through print or video, our EWTN viewers see him every single day if they want, several times a day. We can take it for granted. But when he comes in person, it means it makes a difference.
Father Henry, very briefly, we're just going to sign off here in a couple of minutes.
Just as Father Raymond said that, you know, he was present, that he came to us in persona Christi. He's the Vicar of Christ for, you know, for all Catholic and Christians around the world, for everybody. And for his Indigenous brothers and sisters, you know, he said to us, you matter, that I see your pain, I feel your pain. I'm sorry for this pain that you've experienced over, you know, a long history, and I'm sorry for the part that the church has played for it, that members of the church have played in it, and I want to help you to be healed. I want to help you on your road to recovery and reconciliation, and I hope that you will be able to be more firmly connected again to the body of Christ, and those of us who are responsible for caring for you, for shepherding you, pastoring you, you know, are going to do our part to help you to make that happen.
Amen. Well, we've been walking together with you, walking together with both of you this week. But you, viewers at home, thank you so much for winding up our broadcast. I would like to thank our special guest for the past few days, Father Henry Sands. Father Henry, we've enjoyed your stories, your insights, your witness to the gospel of truth and reconciliation. Thank you so much. We'll be following up with you, I'm sure, over the next, the next number of, I certainly am anyway, and I think you should too. And a big thank you to you, dear Father Raymond. Always a pleasure working with you. I always learn so much. So thank you very much for spending the week with us. And to you, what a beautiful witness it has been to join you. I'd like to thank our crew in Ottawa, everybody who's around here making this happen, to our crew in Birmingham, Alabama, EWTN, the crew at Vatican Radio. It takes a lot of people to put on a broadcast like this, so thank you very much. But most of all, thank you to you at home for tuning in and joining us on this historic pilgrimage of Pope Francis in Canada. It has been a blessing to be with you. My name is Kevin Dunn, and may God bless you.